thank you for having us. And my name is Raffaela, and I will talk about insights from a UX-led organization. Now, disclaimer in advance, I do not want to claim that we are the perfect UX-led organization. But we are trying, and today I want to share as much of our insights and experiences as well as failures, but I would also love to hear what sort of experiences you have made in terms of really trying to put UX first, putting the user first in your product development, but also in how you really build the processes in your companies. So I would love to have it as a dialogue, much more than a monologue today, and just ask questions anytime while I speak. So every company I know wants to be user-focused. But what they say and what they do is different. No company that I know has pulled it off. And actually yesterday I asked on LinkedIn to my network if anybody knows a truly UX-led company. And no one did, at least not of the people who commented. So why is it so difficult? Is it like a management problem that management doesn't understand what UX is? Or is it maybe that just as humans, we are more interested in advancing our own careers rather than doing what's right for the users? Or is it something entirely different? So we are obviously on this journey since 5 years. We are a company that's 5 years old. And maybe to put it in context, we are a training company, an education company, and we're very focused on UX UI trainings, both for complete beginners, but also for advanced professionals. So we have, for example, voice user interface design trainings or UI for UX designers. And as shameless, I was asked for my team, shameless self-promotion, we are looking for a UX researcher at the moment. So if anybody in the room is a UX researcher, then please also come talk to me afterwards. Actually, before I get started into this, I would like to know how many UXers do we have in the room today? A few. Does anybody have no UX knowledge at the so far? Also a few. Okay, perfect. So I try to keep this talk fairly broad, both for beginners as well as for professionals. And so I want to start with actually, why would a company even want to be UX-led? And what does this even mean? And for that we do a little game, just to understand why companies want to be UX-led. And I took a couple of companies, let's go one slide back. And by the way, the Chinese people in the room are not allowed to participate because they would know. But, basically there's only a few companies that are successful in the Western world that have been successful in China. Only a very handful, and most of them have failed. And so I want to look at a few of these companies that have been successful in China and have you guess which the companies are. So, which company is this? Yeah.
Burger King?
Mm-hmm. Any other ideas?
Angry Birds?
Yeah, and one other picture? It's McDonald's, right. So McDonald's obviously has completely changed its product suite in China for the local market taste, with the result of being one of the very few companies that is highly successful in China. Okay, company number 2. What is this? Gets a bit harder now. Yeah?
Kentucky Fried.
Yeah, that's right, KFC. And you see also KFC has very different products in China than they offer here or in the USA. And then last company.
Wow.
This is the toughest one. Ah, yeah.
What is
But somebody already said it. It's Pizza Hut. So, and these are, I think this is a really funny and really easy to understand example that when a company goes and really thinks, what do users actually want? And this could be like an existing product, like these companies that are successful in one part of the world, and they have just gone to another country and have thought, what would users like here in this country? But the same way, of course, if we build a new product, it has the same effect. If we start out with thinking what problems do users actually have, what would they like, we have a higher chance to be successful than if we just do what we've always done, or do what other people do, or do what we think users need. And this is why companies want to become UX-led. And this is why UX at the moment is at peak popularity at all times. So here you see the Google Trends ranking over time, and right now you see it's almost at 100, which is peak popularity. And that is because of exactly this reason. Like, companies have started to understand it's extremely difficult in a company to actually really develop for the user. Because there's many other things, like politics, like personal advancement, like all kinds of things that make it difficult to really build for the user. And that's why they hire an experienced professional, a user experience designer, who comes in and helps them change their mindset. We actually asked, so this is still on why would companies want to be UX-led. So we asked 60 really senior UX experts around the world what they think the return on investment, the ROI of UX is. Because of course, if you go to a senior manager, a CEO, they would say, well, this sounds all well and good, but show me the numbers. Why should I invest in this? Why should I hire people? Why should I do this? So we found out there are 3 main returns on investment. The first is it brings a competitive advantage, and I'm going to show you some numbers in a second. The second is it brings gains, increases in revenue. And the third, it saves cost. So the first, UX-driven companies have outperformed the stock market by 228% in comparison to peers. So researchers have gone and looked at companies that are UX-led or have really strong design focus. So companies like Apple, like Nike, like who else? Google, of course. So companies that really have a strong design focus and have looked at their performance compared to all other companies in the USA. And such a strong overperformance. And why? Does anybody can think of the reason why they have outperformed it so much?
People like their product.
People like their product. Of course, they design for the users, and users in turn like their products, which turns into higher profits over time. Very simple, but I love this chart. I think it's really great. Then the second one is about gains. So how can I actually increase my revenues? I'm the CEO, I'm asking, how can I increase my revenues if I invest in this thing called UX? And again, research has shown that in the USA e-commerce sector alone, about over $1 trillion are lost because of bad UX. So this probably most of you have experienced before. You have wanted to buy something, you saw something nice on an e-commerce shop, wanted to buy a nice t-shirt, and then when you put it into the checkout, all of a sudden it asks you for lots of details. Or you have to register and you have to put in your password which you forgot. And then you're like, it takes too long for you to like actually do the whole password reset and so on. So you leave the checkout. And that accumulated makes over $1 trillion US that is not bought, which is a lot of money for companies and a lot of frustration for us as users, really, right? Because I really wanted that t-shirt that I wanted to buy. So for a CEO, this is a really, really big number. And then lastly, UX saves cost. There's obviously a lot of internal IT projects that companies do, such as building new invoicing systems, building new travel systems, building systems to gain travel costs or book holidays or whatnot. A lot of software is used within companies just for internal processes. And again, often companies spend millions. I just heard from a big German company that had spent 5 million on building a new system to buy business trips for employees. And they had spent 5 million and 2 years to build this. And in the end, nobody used it because it was only in Italian. And most of the company did not speak Italian. So that was a problem. So with a little bit of user research, and this sounds too easy to actually be true, right? This sounds too dumb to be true, but this is happening all around the world all the time. So that makes for about 150 billion lost due to abandoned projects, US dollar. So a lot of money that could be saved if only one would ask the users first. And this is why companies want to be UX-led, where they say, okay, I can get a competitive advantage, I can gain more revenue, and I can save costs. That looks amazing, right? So is UX die eierlegende Wollmilchsau, as we say in German? For those that aren't German in the room, you may not have heard this. This is a German term, beautiful German term for like the can do it all. Can do it all. And I used, because we're today at VW Digilab, who kindly hosts us, so I used a VW advert for this, who asked once to buy the VW as an eierlegende Wollmilchsau. But yeah, so is UX-led, is that the solution to all problems we face? Of course not. And trying to become UX-led can get terribly wrong. It can go terribly wrong. It can end in a lot of investment that goes wrong. It can end in a lot of frustration, in that you try to be UX-led, but in the end, nothing gets done for the users. The whole team is confused. And so it really, if you start and if you want to bring your company and maybe come back tomorrow and talk to your CEO, to your manager, how your team or how your company could even become a bit more UX-led, then you have to follow a couple of steps and know a couple of things. So this is 3 easy steps to become UX-led. This is a chart by Jared Spool, who invented this. And you, by the way, don't have to take every step. So there's companies who immediately go from step 0 to step 3. So you don't have to go every step. But basically the steps are, first, or 0, there is no UX at all. The company has never heard about UX, they have no UX designers, they don't know what it is. And that is the stage that many companies still used to be in Germany just about 2 to 5 years ago. When we would go out and speak to senior management 2 years ago, often the first question we got was, what is UX? And that is not good. Then stage 1 is the hire UX from the outside. So that means they get a freelancer who helps them with their UX efforts. Stage 2 is then to have really full-time UX designers. And that is game-changing. We as a company, by the way, as a company, went through all of these 3 stages. So we started out in 2013, we were 2 founders, and of course none of us is a UX designer. And being founders, sometimes when you found a company, you get a little bit arrogant. And you think, I'm so close to the user, we're just 2 people, we really know what our users want. And we even did a lot of user research back then, when we were just 2 founders. And asked a lot of questions and looked how the users used our product and so on. So we really thought we were good at this. But later, when we went to stage 1 and we hired our first UX designer, we realized that we were really crap at asking the right questions. Because when you do user research, the most difficult thing is actually to ask the right question. Because if you do not ask the right question, you will not get an honest answer. And that's what happened to us, that we didn't get an honest answer. And the second problem was we didn't know how to analyze the data. So we got a lot of information out of users, but we weren't able to analyze it in a way to actually bring it into something high impact, actionable. And we didn't realize so we didn't realize this at the time, but once we went to stage 1, and we hired our first UXer from the outside, we skies cleared, and we realized that our stage 0 had been pretty crappy in terms of UX. Then our stage 2 we started, that was in about 2015, because in 2014 we hired somebody from the outside who was great, who really changed who we were as a company. Through his user research that he did at the time, we grew from about 10 customers a month to 100 customers a month. So really through that work that he did, that first UX designer we had, it was a game changer, and we went from almost bankrupt startup to actually a company that investors, we had so many investor requests, we almost couldn't help ourselves. So that was the difference. It was really phenomenal. And then we started hiring our own UXers, and we thought, oh, now we triple this was what happened last time when we had just one freelance UXer. And we started out with one really senior UX designer who we hired, one who even came in the management team. And then later on, and then stage 3, which is where, this is the hardest stage, is that everybody in the company understands UX or is a UX designer. Every single person. And this is what we see now, by the way, with a lot of companies at least attempting. Like we are training, for example, at a major German airline, we're training people that normally check you in. You know, the people that check you in when you go and bring your bags, these people take UX design courses now, and the company pays for them. That they think more like a UX designer. So right now we see a lot of big companies that take their engineers, that take people that have almost nothing to do with digital products, but they still say UX is everywhere, right? It's not just in the digital world, it's all encompassing. For us, I don't think we're at stage 3 yet. And I will talk a little bit about why, maybe what our challenges were, but also what our learnings and experience were and what we did well. Anyway, so our stage, maybe first before we go there, here you see something, what I just said, what happens all around the world, that the ratio from designer to developer is drastically changing. And this really shows that the sort of more and more companies really try to get design and UX led. Here you see, for example, in the middle you see IBM. I love this. They had one designer to 72 developers in 2012. So a lot of developers and very little designers. And today they have, for the mobile team, one designer for 3 developers. So it really changed massively. And why is that? Of course, because UX and design has produced such amazing returns for companies. And second, because software automates itself. So much of the things that used to be really cumbersome and used to take engineers forever are now today pretty automated. So the usability almost and the design are more important or equally as important as the development. And you see that this also shows that companies go towards stage 2. They have internal users. What does that mean? That doesn't make sense what I wrote there. But yeah, they have internal UX designers in all projects. And they are sort of between many companies, and these are obviously like some of the most successful, most well-known tech companies in the US. So they really go towards sort of that somewhere between stage 2 and stage 3. So, and also, like, let's be honest, you can only create a UX-led company if you have your own UX designers. It's not possible if you have no UX designers, and it's also not possible if you have them from the outside. What else comes in? You need to have people at the top management who are invested in UX and who understand why it's important. But not only that, you also need to have people at the bottom of the organization that actually can do the UX work, that actually have the time to speak to users, that have the time to really think deeply about what the user wants. And this was our mistake when we were in 2015. We hired our first UX designer and we thought we just hire somebody really, really senior and then it will be great. And he will help us become a UX-led organization and we will be amazing and have really fast growth and really build a product that is unparalleled in the world. But, well, we still build a product that is unparalleled. We have amazing user scores. Shameless self-marketing here again. Sorry for that. But when somebody is too senior, they have very little time to actually do the on-the-ground work. They are very involved in strategy and long-term vision and thinking, but they have not enough time to really do the work that needs to get done to really build a UX-led organization. And that was the problem there, that we had sort of somebody too senior almost, and also like sometimes when people get very senior, they don't want to do the very important work that, like user research, like really digging deep into the data and analyzing it and so on. So it's a mix of both, but anyways, basically we were lacking somebody who's actually hands-on UX designer. We had somebody who was too much UX strategy. And that was our first downfall when we tried to become UX-led in 2015. Of course, once we noticed and realized that, we tried to hire, to basically bring some really good UX designers that are hands-on into the team. Then the next challenges that not only us face, but I think every company faces, whether they want to even be UX-led or not, is that UX really requires great planning. If you want to really be great at UX, you have to plan well. And that means, first of all, you need to have, for every single project you do, you need to almost have a research cycle beforehand. And research, unfortunately, rarely ever gets done in a day or so. Sometimes you're lucky and you can do it in a week. But many things that, especially when it comes to product, and it also depends on your product. But for example, our product, we sell courses, right? And a course can take people from a couple of days to months. So sometimes it takes us months to do the user research just because it takes them that long to go through the course. So for us, user research was never a fast thing unless we try to find out only a very tiny bit. So for every single project we do, we really need to factor in the time to do that research. And sometimes that's hard, right? Because you're under pressure, you want to get things done fast, or the investors want something fast. In many companies, it's of course the chief executives and management board want it fast. And then the first thing that gets scrapped is the user research. But that's the most important part if you obviously want to make sure that you build the right thing. So that's number one. And that's why you need to have a management and possibly even investors who are invested in UX and who give that time and who understand why it's so important. Then the second, which we struggled with, was the alignment between marketing and UX. Because when you think UX, well, in some companies UX is part of marketing, and in other companies it's part of product, and yet other companies UX is part of every team, right? But what do you do if the marketing team says, well, we see what users do, but just by doing heat maps, just by seeing what buttons they click through A/B tests. But then of course the user experience designer comes and says, well, but then we see their behavior, but we don't see what they actually would want to do. So I think there's always a trade-off, and in every company that's also an argument. So how do you split that? And I think at the beginning, we didn't anticipate that, and we didn't align them well enough for actually the UX and marketing team to work well enough together to really become UX-led. And I think that is something that is, if you're thinking to do that, to become UX-led, or at least with your team try to be a bit more user-focused, then I think that is something you have to think from the outset. Like, where does UX sit, where does marketing sit, how do they best work together, that you really get an optimal user-focused outcome, rather than just two teams that argue the whole time. UX designers in the room agree. And then lastly, you need the right ratio of UX designers and the rest of team. So for example, many teams you saw, like Intel has like one designer to 3 developers. And we go as far that we say you need about one UX designer for every 6 employees, like across the entire team. Because that way you can ensure that you actually have UX know-how in every part of the team. We even have a UX designer that leads our HR in my company. Because we try to actually approach HR in a UX kind of fashion, that we think, okay, what are the top pain points of the employees? How can we improve for that? How can we find out really deeply, for example, when employees say they feel it's not quiet enough, how can we really find out what is behind that? What do they really mean? Do they mean we don't have enough quiet spaces, or do they want more working from home, or, it could be a lot of things that are behind that. So we're trying to really approach it in every area. And then lastly, you need the talent. So you need to have, of course, the right people inside the team who can actually do UX and who can, make sure that they give you the right approach. Because if you have somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, then you would end up with the same problem like us, that you ask the wrong questions and you can't analyze the data in the right fashion. So is it now UX-led or labyrinth, is the question. So maybe as a takeaway to end this presentation, then start with questions. And so what can you actually do when you go back tomorrow and you say, oh, I heard something that I think could really be a game changer for our company? Well, first of all, inform yourself. It's always good to talk to other companies that have tried to become more UX focused and see what they did exactly. Then the very first thing is you need to get management buy-in. Like if you don't have management buy-in with a UX-led strategy, then it will not work. It's just how it is. But you could start with a team. Like when we speak to companies where they say, our CEO would never approve this, or we're like way too big to have the whole company UX-led, then we say like just start with one team. Because if one team produces better results that way, then of course more and more teams would start working that way. It's very simple that way. But also, if you don't get management buy-in, what many people do is how do you actually create awareness for your management team? How do you create awareness that the managers actually understand UX? And there's a whole variety of workshops, courses, and so on that are offered, that we also do, that you can use to help your management really understand that. Then you need to get team buy-in, also the rest of the team. Once the management is in, then also the rest of the team needs to understand it. And then you have to set up a good process. As said, you have to make sure that marketing and UX is aligned, that you have time for research, that you put the UX process into really your whole development cycle. Yeah, and most likely you have to also see that you get the right ratio of developers to designers for this to really work. But this is of course extreme, right? Sometimes you can also start small and just make sure that the UX designer actually gets enough time and buy-in to do his job well. So if you're interested in giving a bit more of the return on invest data to your management or team leader, we have a whole report that is online that you can download from our website. And yeah, with that, I would love to hear what sort of your experiences are, if any of you have ever tried something like this, and of course, yeah, any questions you may have. Thank you.